you?
I am on the right side of the grass.
Okay. I'll take it. It's been a week. It's been a month. Busy. It's been a month.
Right.
None of us can complain once Tina gets back in the room.
That's true.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We can begin when you're ready.
Okay. I think we're ready. Lynn, would you call us in?
I will. Miss Berry,
Present.
Miss Casper,
Present.
Miss Flum,
Present.
Mr. Hammonds,
Present.
Miss Myers,
Present.
and Mr. Vella.
Here.
Do we have any public comments?
We do. We have 2 people signed up today, and I believe we have maybe Mr. and Mrs. Hill. Well, do you both want to talk one at a time? How do you want to do this?
We can go up there and kind of piggyback off of each other.
All right. We have 3 minutes for you, so come on up.
Hi, my name is Kirsty Hill.
Hi, my name is Teresita Hill. This is my husband, Jimmy Hill. We have 2 of our children at Epic. My daughter, Miracle Hill, she is at Stonegate. My son, Mateo Hill, he is at the Mid-High. What we came to talk about today was we had a meeting last week with the Mid-High, and we discussed some issues as far as with bullying and safety procedures and protocols. And there were a couple of things that we kind of wanted to address to see feedback from you guys and to see if there's anything that we can do to help. So one of the things is the location of the school. As you all know, the Mid-High is located off of Southeast 44th and I-35. Well, in that area, the homeless is absolutely overrun that area. So much so that every time that we go to drop Mateo off or pick Mateo up, it's filthy, it's dirty. There are a lot of people out there. One of the concerns is that with the school isn't gated in. The outside isn't gated in. So it gives them an opportunity to come on the school grounds, to see the children, to be by the children when they're going outside. To me, that is a cause for concern. Just because we're having such issues with human trafficking, that school being so close to I-35, that is a human trafficker's dream. I will tell you, being Hispanic, once the children make it close to Mexico, that's it. They're gone. There's no hope in finding them, and even if you do, you're pretty lucky. So our concern has to do with the safety procedures at that facility. So when the children do go outside, this is what we were advised. When the children go outside, security does join them outside when they're outside. However, where's the security inside when they're outside? We don't know. There isn't security inside. So if for some reason the security is outside with the children while they're doing their recess, if something happens inside of the building, will that security guard have enough time to make it inside and still watch the children that are outside at that same moment? Me, personally, I don't think so. That there's just not enough people to cover the basis that we have to, because there's no gated in area for the children to actually be in. They're out in the open. It's very broad. It would be an easy in and out for someone to come, snatch a child, jump on the highway, and be gone. I wouldn't want that to happen to my child or any other child in that building. The safety thing is an issue for me. Knowing that I'm dropping my children off at school every day and I'm leaving them to you guys to protect them. That is your responsibility. But in the same sense, you're only one person everywhere that you go. Where is your support? Where are the people that are supposed to be helping and guiding you so that you don't have to worry about, oh, those kids are outside, we don't have security inside because he's outside. Or if the kids are outside and the security is inside, who's watching the kids outside besides the one teacher? It's not fair for that one teacher to be responsible for all those children. What if one of them just kind of goes off? And then now we have that one teacher following that one and the other 17 are just sitting there. Who's protecting them?
We are at time. Okay, 2 people sign up if you want to give the other person 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can have it or you can yield your time.
No, I want it.
So just kind of just piggybacking off of what she's talking about, I mean, that's our biggest concern is just the safety issue with the school. Just location, primary location. I know that location has been part of EPICS for several years now. I don't think we're going to get rid of that location, which we're okay with it. It's just, we just wish that there was more security measures in place, more safety protocols in order to protect not only my children, but everyone else's children as well. That is pretty much what our whole basis is. Like I said, because human trafficking is a really big issue, not only just in like general, but especially like the Hispanic community, stuff like that, and in that area is predominantly Hispanic community. Being so close to I-35, I mean, they're on the highway and they're gone. So that just places where we just want to raise concern that a lot of people, maybe y'all didn't know that, about the homeless that is there. I mean, just the other day, there was that's a little bit further away from where the school is, but they did, like the homeless did start a fire under the actual structure. The actual structure they were cooking, like had a grill out there and they had a big flame going. I mean, just safety precautions like that, just how easy it is for those people to just come onto school grounds so easily and then take a child and be gone. That's just, like I said, that's just our biggest concern. And we just want to help you guys in any way that we can, help facilitate that in any way that we can.
So if there's something that we're able to do to advocate for you guys, to reach out to whomever we need to reach out to, we are more than willing to do so. I have contacted news stations. I have contacted the police department, their Homeless Alliance team. I have contacted all of that. The issue is there is not a big presence about it. What I'm getting back is, well, EPIC they haven't mentioned anything about this. We haven't received anything from EPIC telling us that there is an issue. There isn't any type of documentation from EPIC voicing that concern, and that's where our concern comes in. Thank you so much for allowing us time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Bart, it looks like we're down to Superintendent Spotlight.
Yeah, I think we've got a video here that Sean and Jeremy are going to pull up for us on one of our students. Yeah, so this is a recent edition of Epic Insider, which is our monthly talk show, and we visit with a variety of folks from the Epic ecosystem, and this one is about extracurricular programs that we offer here at Epic. So many of our people that are watching online right now may or may not know that we have a really robust variety of programs and extracurriculars that students can join, and so we're trying to get as many students as we possibly can plugged in to our ecosystem, and so we're going to get to visit. It's not with a student, it's actually with one of our employees. Hi everyone, I'm Bart Banfield, Superintendent of Epic Charter Schools. We are the largest statewide virtual charter school in Oklahoma, and welcome back to our monthly talk show, Epic Insider. At Epic, one of our guiding principles is that every student in our care will be future ready and in demand by the time they graduate high school. And while good grades and test scores are certainly an important part of that goal, taking part in an array of Epic clubs and organizations goes a long way towards shaping well-adjusted adults who are ready to face grown-up challenges. In fact, there is an overwhelming data that suggests students who engage in extracurricular activities are more likely to succeed academically. Generally speaking, students who engage in school sports, clubs, and academic competitions are more likely to do better in school, learn conflict resolution skills, and are more likely to avoid behavioral problems. Joining me today to talk about the fun and exciting extracurricular options at EPIC, Jessica Ponder, EPIC Student Organization Coordinator. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with, Jessica, how many clubs and organizations does EPIC have to offer?
EPIC currently has over 40 student organizations and clubs to offer. Yeah, there's a little bit of everything. Whatever students are into, they'll surely find something with our various offerings and for all of our ages, from pre-K all the way to 12th grade.
I love the fact that we have such an inclusive environment here at EPIC, that we start at the pre-kindergarten level and literally run it all the way up to the high school level, offering opportunities for kids to engage. It's fantastic. Okay, next question. So, what are the most popular groups at our school, and why do you think they're so popular?
Well, that's a great question. We have so many groups. Which one is most popular is really hard to say. Our students can choose from academic, cultural, competitive, leadership. It kind of depends on the interest of the students. There's our 4-H. That one is doing a lot of things within the community, as well as we had some that started last year. Our Model UN actually won awards in its first year. So even the ones from the smallest to the biggest, they're all doing great things.
That's fantastic. So, what are some of the things that students should consider when choosing the right club or organization?
Well, I think that it's important that they choose something they're interested in. We give them the opportunity. There's a lot of freedom within our clubs, but we really want you to show up. I find that the ones that I led personally, I saw my students continuously coming, and I think they really, the more they engage, the more they gain from it. So look at the times that they're offered, look at the commitment, and make sure you're able to be involved.
That's great advice. So let's talk for a minute about the link between extracurricular activities and student performance. Has it been your experience that students do better when they're engaged in some sort of school activity?
Oh, for sure. I talk to advisors from other clubs that say that their students, they love it. The advisors do it because the students love it. They show up, they come, they participate, they bring their families, they want to be a part of this, they want to show off what they're doing. I get emails from families saying, thank you. My kid, when we came to EPIC, we weren't sure if they would find a place, and they found their place, and they're feeling involved, they're feeling connected, their confidence has gone up. It's just really beautiful to read a lot of the responses that we get from families and students themselves.
I think one of the things we're doing at EPIC is helping students to find their purpose. And so many times, if you're not sure what your purpose is, follow your passion, and your passion will lead you to your purpose in life. So I love the fact that we're doing that. Lastly, where can our students and families find out more about the extracurriculars and how to get involved?
Well, on our website, we'll have all of those listed. That they go to epiccharterschools.org and they go to Student Light. They'll find our clubs and organizations. They'll be able to read more about them, the times, the descriptions, as well as find the interest forums to get signed up.
Sounds very convenient. So, Jessica, thank you for joining us and for all the hard work that you do.
Thank you.
You bet. And a special thanks to our viewers out there for watching this edition of EPIC Insider. I'm your host, Bart Banfield. And until next time, remember, at EPIC, school can be different, and so can you. So really fun to get to visit with Jessica. She is such a wonderful personality, and the opportunity to interview her and get to know a little bit more about the various programs that EPIC is offering. We have really grown those extracurriculars and the programs over the last couple of years. Just a few years ago, we really didn't have a ton of opportunities for kids to engage with one another, and so to see that grow over the last couple of years has been really rewarding. Jessica does a tremendous job, and I also want to give a shout out to our communications department for putting that video together. They do such a great job of creating those videos and then pushing them out on our various social media channels and just trying to communicate as much as we possibly can with EPIC families.
I would join those clubs because yes, it was really nice, and I mean, what an engaging person.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Thank you. All right, we are on to board committee reports. Do you have anything for us?
We have received several applications, have been in a holding pattern the last few weeks. We'll get back to that as soon as possible and review those.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We did not meet because I didn't know if I'd be here, so we will meet next time.
Okay, thank you very much. It looks like we have consideration and possible action to approve the pathway applicants.
All right, well, you have that in your material on item 2B, and there is good news and good news, and the good news that the font is so small on here. The reason it's good because we have 198 students that have asked to be a part of the Pathways program, and with school already starting, we're trying to get as many in as we can as soon as possible. And I know the ad hoc committee, we met earlier this week, and at the time, you had the 172, and that's that yellow line of demarcation, and those below have just been added since Monday. So if there's any questions.
I would move to accept the applications as applied for.
I'll second.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Ms. Flom?
Yes.
Mr. Hammonds?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
And Mr. Vella?
Yes.
All right, Dr. Summers, you're up.
Good afternoon.
We're so glad to see you, Bob.
Good afternoon,
Thank you
Dr.
for being
Summers.
here.
I've got two things today to cover a little bit. One is corporate governance and a few of the items that drive how you function and how you get your work done. There's packets in front of you. We got the booklets for you. The two that I would recommend that you look at first are these two, the one in yellow and the one in blue. This one is really important, the ends and ownership. By the way, Ginger and I both agree the word ends sounds like you're coming to an end. It's meant in ends is the same as like aspirations, impact, outcomes, those sorts of things. So take a look at those. Let me go to the next slide. As we said last time, we've got 10 things that the board's really got a responsibility to get done. And if you look at them, the first one is community expectations. You have a responsibility for representing or giving voice to the people in the community. And you do that mostly through future-ready graduate skill sets and your aspirations. So we'll be talking about aspirations in a minute. Next, no, stay right where you are. Establish and promote the organization's mission, vision, values, and aspirations. Again, you're going to do that a little bit today. Acquire performance information. If you look in the policies, you have a calendar of activities that come before the board on a pretty regular basis. And all of those expectations that you've decided previously to look at as far as performance are included in that calendar. So as you think about performance, if there are things that you want to look at and understand within the organization, that's where you would come as a board to say, I want to make those changes in the calendar so you get the information you want. Establishing clear policies, you do a beautiful job of that with Carver and also the backup policies that are required by law. Evaluate student financial and process performance. Again, that's on the calendar. As you work through that, hire and evaluate the superintendent. You have an evaluation process that includes 360 assessments, which is one of the better approaches to that process. And you also have annual performance of the school district itself. Legal responsibilities, ethical manners are items that are not so much on the agenda, but it's part of your policies. Ethics is always an interesting place to spend some time on a regular basis to make sure that you have the exact statements that you want, to make sure that the board sets the standards that flow into the rest of the organization. And then evaluating effectiveness and board development. Board development includes your selection of your next board members. So does that make sense? Questions? This is kind of your job description, as it were. So if we go to the next slide, we break that job description up into 4 parts. we decide what the organization is to achieve. And in this case, you're working predominantly with K-12 students, but as you saw with your vote just now, you have decided as a board to go beyond K-12 and go to the age of 25 on people that are requiring diplomas. That's a conscious decision around ends targets. So is aspirations and future-ready graduate. Decisions about the board's own work, decisions about how you transfer that work, and then what do you do in the way of putting limitations on the management to accomplish the ends that you want to achieve. And this is where the bulk of the work actually occurs. If you look at this graphic, there's the white areas around the entire circle is what the board does in its totality, all the board members together. And if you know what you're trying to accomplish and you know what you're not allowed to do to accomplish that, then you can make the rest of the governance work very nicely. The X is the board chair, the Y is the superintendent, and so for anything that the board doesn't make a decision on, that goes into the purview of those two individuals and the organizations behind them. And that's how you build kind of a balance to the entire process. And I want to stop there just for a second. Does this kind of make sense to you from a general standpoint? We've talked about it before and just kind of revisiting. Questions? Now, what's interesting, and will work over the next few months, what's that mean by executive limitation? Well, if there's something that you see that doesn't make sense to you, you're, as an individual board member, that's the kind of items that you bring to the board and say, are there things that we should restrict? Are there things that we should say, no, we can't do? You try to keep those to a minimum, but you want to be honest and upfront with the administration. If you don't like certain behaviors and procedures, then knowing that up in front makes it much easier to understand how to run the organization for the things that they are allowed to do. So this is an important area. This is an important area that we're going to deal with a little bit today. Next slide. Speaking of that, here are the 5 aspirations that currently drive the organization. They've gone through one iteration that I know of. We had the original 5 aspirations. There were some modifications made about a year and a half ago, as I recall. And these drive what everybody in the organization thinks about. The first one is probably the most important, that graduates will be empowered, future ready, and in demand. And that drives a lot of thinking within the organization, and you'll see that in performance. The other 4 also add value as people within the organization, within EPIC, to try to build out a high-quality organization. This is, the aspiration statements are something that the board wants to pass and put into board policy, and then as the times change and you make adjustments, you may want to revisit those. We've got these on the board agenda because we realized that the modifications, although talked about with the board, were never actually approved. So we want to make that formal process. Questions on the aspirations, the 5? Kind of see where it drives the decision making? Do you see those in the examples of what you see come before the board? Let's go to the next slide. This is all of the stuff that we just talked about put into 6 little circles. One is envision where you want to be, and that's your aspirations and your mission. Clarify, that's where most of the KPIs come and the relationships you have with the superintendent. And then this little line says, okay, you've envisioned, you've clarified, now, Mr. Banfield, it's your job to deliver on that, right? And the entire team that works, and they work here in the planning process, the execution of that plan, the analysis of that plan, and modifications. Notice how much occurs below the line so that when it comes out the other end with the performance that you expect against your ends policies, you can make a judgment day of did we achieve it or not, And if we didn't, we may need to make changes in envisioning and clarifying to make that support happen. Life isn't that simplistic, but the closer we keep to this model, the more successful you become over time because people know their role in the process. Next slide. For a first read, each one of the aspiration statements have underneath it a set of key performance indicators. The key performance indicators can be decided on by the board itself, but you decided to turn that over to Bart to provide leadership to make sure that we get high-quality KPIs in place. But it doesn't abdicate you, or it doesn't abdicate the responsibility for the board to work to approve these, so that it's very, very clear what we're trying to accomplish within the organization. We're not going to have a vote today on this because you need time to reflect and move that out into the future. There's no urgency to approve them immediately, so we're going to give you time to work through that and think about what you consider. These are probably the first time you've seen these because it's a fairly new document. However, you've seen a lot of these measures come to you over the period of time. Questions or comments on this new content? All right. Once established, these will help the rest of the organization to know what they should be measuring and what they should be focused on. So we look forward to working with you on that. That's the governance side. So how did we do? How did we do this past year on performance? And that's where we started last month, and we want to continue. So next slide. Here's the good news. We showed you this the last time. The reality is that we had a really great year, right? Test results are up substantially. The only problem is that if you've been reading the newspaper and you've been studying a little bit, everybody in Oklahoma went up, and some of them went up dramatically. So how much of this growth is from the hard work of the staff here, and how much of it is an automatic or an arbitrary change in the cut scores that made scoring easier in the state of Oklahoma? So same standards, easier passage rates. So we decided to take a look. Now here's the good news. If somebody's looking at the state of Oklahoma and they look up EPIC, this is what's going to be on your state report cards. So this is the good news. You get credit for everything, credit for the lower cut scores plus the work that you did. So there's no downside to this, but let's take a look. How much of this can we attribute or at least understand what the school district did? And there's two parts to this. One, I'm going to cover a little bit, and then Justin's going to come up and talk about some more detail as well. Next slide. It's an odd slide, but it is how much change from 22, 23, and 24 we had against comparables. So for Tulsa and Oklahoma City, we used to be at 6 percentage points above them. This year, you were at 12 and 11 percentage points. So you made dramatic gains when compared to your underlying comparables. Make sense? Now, the downside, this, by the way, is reading. You did lose 4 percentage points against the state average, and that's going to come back in a minute. But the good news is, comparables of the large districts, you're making progress greater than theirs, even though they went up as well. So does that kind of make sense? Next slide. This one's math. Now this one is interesting in that you barely had a change in the state average, but you again made dramatic gains against the comparables in math as well. So what's this tell us? It tells us that at least a significant part of this, when shared with the comparables that we look at on a regular basis, we outperformed their gains. Next slide. Odd little chart. This one's a little old. This was one that I had from another project that I had. This is the general distribution of schools. I just realized that slide's kind of messy. 0 enrollment over to 500 students enrolled. And each one of those dots is one of the 500 and some districts in the state of Oklahoma. And so you can see that the vast majority of school districts in Oklahoma are 500 students or less. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. These two are Tulsa and Oklahoma City. This is a little older. Epic sits about right here. So now remember this, because what we found on the next slide is that, go ahead, size does matter in enrollment. The lower the enrollment tends to be higher performing at this juncture. And this was defending what we came to realize in the data, that some of your comparisons were being tainted by the fact that you were a very large district and very small districts were making dramatic shifts within those cut scores being cut lower. So you can tell very small school districts range from 100% passage all the way to 0% passage, and then you play yourself out. Here is Epic, here is Tulsa and Oklahoma City, here is Edmond, and then Putnam City. And as you can tell, you're below the line on the size, but you're really large school districts. And the smaller school districts tended to have an advantage in the scoring process. Next slide. Next. There you go. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to say, how did we do in comparison with the rest of the school districts in the state of Oklahoma? This is a percentile ranking, so that we start out, we were at about the 30th percentile in scores in 22, about the same thing in 23, down slightly in 24. You can see the comparables, the larger districts. Again, these are all larger districts, greater than 500. And you can see that there was general decline of those larger districts. But we actually stayed pretty solid. This is in mathematics. So does that slide? So percentile rank means that 30% of the school districts in the state of Oklahoma scored less well than we did. Or put it in a positive sense, we're scoring, well, that's the best positive spin I can give you. If you look at, for example, Tulsa is now at the 20th percentile, so 20% of the schools in the state of Oklahoma score below them. The purple Putnam City had a decline, so did Deer Creek. Deer Creek was pretty steady, actually. Edmond had a slight decline overall. Again, all of these compared to the smaller school district. Next slide. That was math. Here's ELA. Here's one area that we probably need to take a look at. There's an opportunity for improvement where the scores were all down as a state ranking for reading. So those small districts did a really good job of working with reading overall. So we have some lower scores. We were able to pass Putnam City, but going from 41 percentile down to the 20th percentile is not what we want to do overall. Again, part of this is the small schools. Let's go to the next slide and I'll show you. So this is our overall percentile rank change when you only look at districts that are greater than 2,000 students. And as you can tell, it's pretty much flat. We're pretty much flat right here. Putnam City moved a little bit, but most of them are pretty stable. Again, most of the percentile ranking changes is because of changes in those small schools, those 500 students or less. Questions? Next slide. Now, here is an interesting one that we found in the data, that that poverty does matter, but what really matters in a pretty large line of fit, this blue line going from low to high, is on the percent of students that are on IEPs, so SPED student percentages. These are not SPED scores, these are scores of all the students in these school districts, but as you can tell, the percentage of special ed, the more you have, the lower these scores become, the performance overall. And so on the blue, this is EPIC. You're below where you would like to be, but you're above all of the districts below you. And you'll notice that there are some districts in our comparable group that actually have much lower percentages of SPED students than we do. So Tulsa and Oklahoma City actually serve fewer students with disabilities than what EPIC does. Does that make? And yet your scores outperform them. In fact, you outperform Putnam City as well. You still are not to the line of fit, so we have an opportunity for improvement. We've got some examples above that we probably could learn from up in this area here. But for the most part, it's pretty solid or a pretty valuable connection point. Next slide. This one is math. Math's even a greater disparity. Students with disability percentages have dramatic shifts in performance on mathematics. And you'll notice that, again, EPIC, while having a high SPED percentage, outperforms several others, outperforms the ones below it, and is getting closer to that line of fit. So what's it all mean? At the end of the day, the scores are up for everybody. Your scores went up with them. As far as we can tell, you did not go up as quickly as small schools, but you were very competitive with staying in line with schools of 2,000 students or higher. Your performance is consistent with those other scores, even though everybody went up together. You have a tendency to be overperforming the other ones, especially when you look at your comparisons of Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and some of the larger districts. Your performance was better in the net than what theirs were. So bottom line, you probably don't want to claim all of it, but at the end of the day, on your state report card, it's going to report all of it. The scores are up. Questions? How's that for an amazing array of dots and lines and everything else? I hope you appreciate the work that the data folks do to try to make this possible for you. It's a complex question that is not easy to respond as to the net impact of just the change in the cut scores. But all in all, I feel very good about the school district and where it sits right now.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Justin to give you a little more detail on some of this stuff.
We have a quick consideration on the aspirations you put forth.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I'll move that we approve the 5 aspirations as put forth by Dr. Summers.
Second.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Ms. Flom?
Yes.
Mr. Hammonds?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
And Mr. Villa?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Good afternoon. Justin Hunt, Deputy Superintendent of Instruction. Over the course of probably the next 2 or 3 months, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into our organization specifically regarding these test results as we compile them and as we analyze them. Bob did a great job of comparing us to other organizations in the state. I have some of that stuff in here, but over the next 2 or 3 months, we'll go a little bit deeper. So again, this is probably the 3rd time you've seen this, and probably because we're so proud of it. you see all the media of resetting the standards, and schools really don't know where they stand, and we kind of have to use this year as a benchmark for future years. But at the end of the day, the analysis that Bob has done and that our data team under Michael Flory have done have shown us that we had growth. It's difficult to quantify without putting about 7 or 8 things together, but we had growth, and so we want to make sure we celebrate that. However, one of the biggest talking points that Bart and myself have this year is complacency. It's been a while since we had growth, and it's fantastic to celebrate that, but we're still not good enough. Okay, we can't get complacent with where we're at. The key performance indicators that we've measured in previous years, we've taken to a higher notch. One of those is student engagement. So last year was the first year that we had an expectation that our teachers meet with our students at least one time a week. Okay, so we had an average engagement, we call it, which is basically students working. I think it was around low 70s. So we've increased that to 80%. Okay, we feel like in its implementation year of that expectation, we should be able to take that a step further now that we have more sites across the state of Oklahoma. And the first year is always a little bit sticky when you're training students and getting families on board with actually meeting in person. So we want to be better in that area, and that's just one of the areas. So as you can see, like I said, this is about the 3rd time you've seen it. We're really proud of the growth that we've seen and the hard work that our teachers as well as our students and families put forth in order for us to receive these results as an organization. So this breaks it down by grade level. Okay, across the bottom is the grade level. On the left side would be the proficiency or the pass rate. So as you can see, our ELA pass rate across the organization is higher, but as Bob articulated, that's one of the areas that's lower compared to the state, and he mentioned as an opportunity for improvement. So we're taking that into consideration. And then the math is in the red. So, the math is a little bit all over the place. The ELA is pretty flat across in terms of where we're at as an organization. And then this is, Bob showed you the differences, which I thought was great. This is actually to see it in a traditional bar graph. So EPIC being the far right column in each of these years, and the state being in the far left, and then Oklahoma City and Tulsa are the red or the green and yellows. I'm sorry. A lot of people question, like, why do you always just compare yourself to Oklahoma City and Tulsa? Well, those are where the majority of our students come from, and demographics and socioeconomic statuses, we really closely mirror those two organizations or schools. So that's the why, and we've outperformed them consistently. And as you can see from this chart in regards to ELA, as well as Bob's differences chart, our gap is getting wider. We have managed to increase the gap between us and those two comparables. So, I don't want to say we're excited about it, but when we talk about those that we can actually compare ourselves to in terms of size and those variables, this is how we compare in terms of ELA. Same thing with math. The gap got a little bit wider. This one's a little bit flipped. EPIC's on the far left. Oklahoma City and Tulsa are still the green and the yellow. And the taller bar in all 3 years is the state of Oklahoma. So obviously we want to be closer to the average across the state of Oklahoma. And that's ultimately our goal, and we don't want to be complacent. So this, and it's really small print, but this kind of breaks out some of our programs. So you hear us talk about this a lot. The far left is Math Plus, and the number in parentheses in regards to Math Plus is 1,537 students. That's how many Math Plus students are testable. Testable grades are only 3 through 8 in high school for the ACT with juniors. So you can see how Math Plus compares to one-to-one students that weren't Math Plus, Schoolhouse, which is now Comet. These are our learning centers, okay? What's interesting to me on this, traditionally speaking, or historically speaking, our learning centers have had a larger gap with our one-to-one in terms of performance, and we are catching up to them a little bit in terms of the one-to-one side, and I really feel like it has to do with the priority that we had on student engagement. That's one of the things that our learning centers has that our one-to-one side doesn't, is students in person. And when we increase that expectation to 1 time a week, I really feel like that has a lot to do with narrowing that gap between one-to-one and VLCs. And then what we've done is we've taken our highest performing MDI, which an MDI supervises about 4 to 5 principals. Okay, our highest performing MDI had about 513 testable students. Kind of shows you where they mark with in regards to the organization. And then our highest performing principal had 178 testable students. Kind of shows you where our high performing administrators compare in terms of the organization. This would be a representation of our highest performing reg ed teacher, okay, meaning they don't have any special education students. Only 18 students that were testable. I say only, that's quite a few, really. And that's where they mark. So what we're doing right now at the data team level is we're trying to dig into what did these folks do that the organization didn't, or what did they do better, or what did they really buy into that maybe as an organization most of our folks were resistant to. So a sharing of best practices. So our data team seeks those people out, asks them questions. If there's any programs they used more than the majority of the organization, then they use that data to measure and see if that was a benefactor on their proficiency. Same thing with high-performing special education teacher, 13 testable students. Again, that's pretty high. And where they performed in regards to the entire organization as well as the reg ed teacher is pretty interesting. I will tell you that while a regular education teacher only has regular education students, a special education teacher can also teach regular education students. So that's a little bit different, but that's remarkable in my opinion. And then all students, this is the same as what you've seen previously on the first graph, the last 3 board meetings. ELA was 34.97, and then math was 22.8. Questions about test scores? Like I mentioned, we'll go into a little bit more detail next month, as well as the month after that. Yes, sir.
On that last graph, the 13 students that the special education teacher had, are they not necessarily special education students? Because you said that teacher...
They could be, yeah. They could be either, yeah. So this teacher could have had 4 special education students and testable students and 9 testable regular education students.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I was just thinking about, it's not really a question, but the student ratio and exactly the data you're pulling here, because of, from what we learned from Bob, like the number of students really counts. And if we run our school as like a series of micro schools, I think that's just brilliant to figure out how to get the same effect across such a large and diaspora. And then FaceTime obviously isn't the key because we're outperforming 2 schools that are in-person schools with our same, but I also think that, just rolling that out and getting that in-person time is not only important for scores, but for that social emotional piece. And I would be curious to see if we can add KPIs on that or figure out how to get some kind of metrics there to see if this in-person time is gaining us more pro-social behavior, because I know right now like that's a big factor and another factor that we've been asked to address, and so maybe it's time to start gathering some data there and whatever that really means. I mean, but I think that in-person time might be something we could clock.
Yeah, so I think, let me see if I can articulate that too, because I think teaching is part art and part science. And so the academic piece is the science piece. But what Ginger's talking about is the art of teaching, which is the social piece. And I have an interesting statistic for you. We were looking at the comparables to Tulsa Public Schools and Oklahoma City Public Schools. Since July, since we're talking about performance, we've added 9,835 new students to EPIC. And I would be willing to bet you there's not another public school in Oklahoma out of the 500 that added 9,835 new students. to their population. So when Bob's talking about the small schools, the stability of enrollment, the consistency of enrollment, and having those, as a former brick and mortar superintendent, having the same student year after year after year after year, and the same staff year after year after year after year makes a difference. So just keep that in mind.
Well, and I don't, again, another KPI that makes me think of is like, what kind of, I know for my family, knowing that Epic was there as a safety net was a big deal.
Sure.
And knowing that my student could still graduate on their own terms in their own home, if that's what they needed for their health, was a big deal. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate you, Justin, for being so transparent with our data at the micro level. And then Bob, I appreciate you being so transparent with our data at the macro level and giving us the context that you did.
Art, does that number that you mentioned, the 9,000, does that include pathway students?
It does. It does. But the pathway students, I think right now, the ones that you just approved are not counting towards that. So I think we're around 100 of those. And just to put that into context, that same number of new applications last year, we had 16,690 new students that applied to come to Epic last year. So you can just see the volume that we're dealing with, and so it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's one that clearly we've embraced, and we're going to share it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and be incredibly transparent with you all and the folks that are watching online. And we're not perfect. We are a work in progress, but I appreciate the transparency.
I was going to say I do as well, that it wasn't sunshine pumping. It was, facts and what we should be looking at and comparisons, and I truly appreciate the transparency and just straightforwardness of it all.
Yeah, what comes in this room needs to come in here with data.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. We need to take a 5-minute break out here, so
Yes.
can we just take 5 minutes? Okay. Okay, we are back. All right, Lynn, we're back.
Okay, do we need to call roll again?
That is a Brandon question.
Okay, that's what I thought.
All right, we are back after a short break, and we are going to resume with Leadership and Administration Superintendent Report. All right, Bart?
All right, let's pull up the slideshow. Can you believe we're back to school? Here's an interesting date for you. On October the 18th, that'll be the end of the first 9 weeks. Can you believe it? I mean, so here we are. We were just talking about back to school, September 12th. We're going to get the superintendent update. We're going to talk about what's going on. But, I mean, it just shows you how fast the school year goes. We're going to look up here in just a little over 30 days, and it's going to be the end of the first 9 weeks. We're going to be a fourth of the way done with the new school year. So, all right, let's do our superintendent update. There's our 5 aspirations with their symbols. Next up. This one I am really, really interested in the potential of. So Epic Charter Schools and OU Health are collaborating to provide expert medical care to Epic's more than 30,000 students through a telehealth program beginning this fall. So the program will provide school-based virtual medical care, regardless of insurance status. OU Health and Epic Charter Schools will offer the service to Epic students for sick visits, chronic disease management, and some behavioral health conditions. Each participating school is equipped with telehealth software and associated diagnostic devices that will allow them to perform comprehensive virtual examinations in school. And so I asked the question, and I bet you're wondering, how in the world do you do virtual telehealth? Doctors here, patients there. How do we do that in a ethical way? And what we found is we actually employ 2 nurses, one in Tulsa, one in Oklahoma City, that are on site every day, and our 30,000 students can come to that location to receive free medical care. So you think about, in the times that we're in, economic times that we're in, how powerful it is to be able to seek and receive medical care regardless of your insurance status. And so the thought being, if this goes well, and we'll report back to you, potentially we could expand this partnership now that we're expanding our physical footprint throughout the state of Oklahoma, and potentially create more locations that are regional specific to cut down on the travel time, the transportation time that our students and parents have to endure in order to receive medical care. And so this one I'm very proud of, and I think it has incredible potential.
Bart,
Yes.
My health centers, we have 180 locations across the state, and they're federally funded health centers. We provide services, mental health, primary care, dental, regardless of ability to pay. So, I mean, we do telehealth all the time.
Love it.
And have school-based services. So, we can talk about
Yes.
ways that we could help to meet this need in other communities.
I love it. I love it. I mean, this is student-centered right here. So great, and just wanted to share that OU Health partnership with us. Hey, good news. We're excited to share that Epic Charter Schools has been recognized again as one of the best places to work in Oklahoma. We're going to be featured in an upcoming issue of the Journal Record in November. The official rankings will be revealed during an event hosted at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum on Thursday, November 22nd, which, as Bob mentioned, that was one of our KPIs. If you saw on the list there, we wanted to see, number one, did we become a best places to work? But then part 2 of that is, where do we stack up? Because we're competing with other large organizations that are best places to work as well. And so I think last year, Shauna or Janice, do you all remember, did we finish 13th? Yeah, so out of the large category, we finished 13th, and so we're hoping to be in the top 10 this year. And so, but we're just continuing to strive to make progress to be a best place to work in Oklahoma. So, very good. Next slide. Here's some updates from our Mid-High Learning Center. So the Oklahoma City Mid-High Learning Center, teachers spent time establishing norms, routines with each group of students at the beginning of the year. And so there's just a few pictures there, but we've got kiddos back in our classrooms, and we are excited to see them. Heritage Academy is back to school, and we had a Meet the Teacher night, and you can see what they did on those back to school nights. Here's some pictures from them, and really proud of our learning centers and the work that they're doing in the communities. Trevor and I were just talking about that offline, and the fact that so many of our learning centers are in high need communities, and we're proud to be serving in those communities, both in Oklahoma County and in Tulsa County as well. Next slide. World Language. So EPIC's World Language Department, led by Chris Myers, visited the OKC Mid-High Learning Center August 23rd, and they collaborated as a group to make sure our world language students are best served. So I've got some statistics coming your way here in just a minute. All right, let's go. How about this? As of August 2024, EPIC has more than 1,100 currently enrolled students whose parents or guardians reported a home language other than English. There are more than 30 languages routinely spoken in these homes. The top 10 are Spanish at 87.54%, Pashto at 2.34%, Persian at 1.92%, Russian at 1.76%, Arabic at 1.34%, Urdu at 0.84%, Vietnamese at 0.59%, German at 0.42%, Portuguese at 0.33%, and Ukrainian at 0.33%. And so you can clearly see we are serving a very diverse population of Oklahomans here, and that doesn't even take into account the number of our native students and their tribal language as well. So keep that in mind. We've got around 6,000 to 7,000 Native American students, and a lot of those students speak different language as well. We've got back-to-school expos going on all across the state of Oklahoma. EPIC Charter Schools Back to School Open House Expo, and here's some pictures of our staff meeting with families all across the state of Oklahoma to sort of introduce them, and it's open to both returning families as well as new families, but just trying to give them sort of what we would call an orientation into EPIC, who we are and how we can best serve them. This is something to be very proud of. So RISE Academy, if you're not familiar, RISE Academy is specifically dedicated to students that are credit deficient. And in most cases, they're at least a year and a half behind their cohort in terms of transcript and credit count. And so what we do is we put them into RISE Academy, and you can see here 404 students now enrolled in RISE Academy with an average of 10 to 15 more referrals coming in every day. We had 41% growth from this time last year, 90% of students completing our academic success course in the first 2 weeks of school. So we had 85 2024 graduates, and that's rising. 30% are on cohort, 68% behind cohort, 2% ahead of cohort, and the 25 Pathways students, 198 of which you just approved here today, are students that are in the Pathways program that are 25, that are getting ready to age out at 26, are also going to be in RISE Academy, and we've added 2 additional teachers to support them. So a good education can change anyone. A good teacher can change everything. And what we try to do with that RISE Academy, for those that are watching online, if you're not familiar with it, is we try to accelerate the learning of those students through what I would call like a block scheduling, but it's just basically in every 8 weeks trying to catch them up on cohort and get those students across the finish line to that high school diploma. And so I'm so excited to see the progress that was made in 2024 with 85 graduates. I'm going to be just as excited to bring you Pathways student information as soon as we get that. But the RISE team is as compassionate and caring a group as we have. We truly provide wraparound services to these students that are on the verge of dropping out and becoming a statistic. And so we're just meeting them right where they're at. Next slide. Yeah, so let's meet one of our RISE Academy students. I told you we had a student video. I was thinking it was on the superintendent spotlight, but this is one of our RISE Academy graduates. Let's hear her story. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I didn't want people looking down on me because I didn't have a high school diploma. I knew I didn't have a lot of chances left since I was already 2 years behind, and RISE became an opportunity that I immediately grabbed.
RISE Academy is a program that was created to reach students who have fallen behind, and our primary focus is to get them caught up and get them graduated.
We try to prevent any issue that will keep that student from withdrawing from school. If they need a home, we have a school-based social worker that will help us place them in a home. If we have a student that's a parent that may need help with formula, diapers, food, our counselor provides mental health support.
My sister chose to drop out of high school, and it has made her life exponentially harder.
We work at an accelerated pace in RISE Academy. A typical EPIC student, their goal is to complete 12 courses in a school year, whereas RISE Academy, our goal is that they complete anywhere from 16 to 18 at a minimum.
Miss Jennings is one of the best teachers I've had. She did not give up on me. I finished 22 classes in the span of one school year. It was one of the most relieving feelings I've ever felt. Like I just did that.
We are trying to help them change their journey. We are trying to help them rewrite a story so that even though they may have a history of trauma, even though they may have a history of loss, we want them to realize that actually there is hope and there's a future.
RISE was the nutrients that I needed, the sunlight that I needed, the watering, the right amount. And I absolutely thrived.
If I can help one student connect with one student, then I've done my purpose, helping them see their potential when maybe they've never seen it before. It feels incredible knowing that I'm a part of that.
One last interesting statistic. I was at a Tulsa Chamber of Commerce meeting this last year or the year before, and the speaker gave a shocking statistic. The annual livable wage, the annual wage in America for a high school dropout is $9,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's the annual average wage of a high school dropout in America. And so the fact when you see just one testimony from a student whose life and trajectory has been changed, the fact that we're doing that with hundreds and now with Pathways, potentially thousands of Oklahomans, and helping them get across the finish line and exponentially change their life is meaningful work. And so I'm really proud of our team. And I thank you all for helping support us with these students that have applied for a second chance. That's all I've got.
I was going to say, I was watching the Notre Dame game a couple weeks ago because as a Catholic, I think you're contractually obligated to do so.
Pretty much.
I think. But they had a infomercial, and the University of Notre Dame is doing something with, I can't remember which local schools it was.
With Goodwill?
Yes, with Goodwill. Did you see the same thing? Okay, yeah, and talking about even the difference on the livable wage of a GED versus the actual high school diploma, there is a significant difference in how much you can earn having that. So just when I saw it, it's like, hey, we're doing that.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was very cool. Thank you.
I just want to commend the leadership, because the leadership kind of above our heads really failed these kids with COVID, and really failed. They just lost opportunities that they just could not get a grip. You know, there was just nothing to grab onto. Yeah. And I just want to commend the leadership here, because everybody also went through that here, along with some other really dramatic, impactful changes. And instead of focusing on themselves, this organization focused on those students and getting out there, and no matter how much communication it takes, no matter how much dollars it takes, no matter how many bodies it takes in the room, no matter how much retraining it takes, no matter how many sessions it takes to get the job done, this organization has made huge gains on these students who we just left them behind. And we're letting them catch up now. We're giving them some space and some breathing room and meeting them there. And I'm thrilled that this student can get that done that quickly. And feel so positive about it. And I just want to point out, like, that is this organization specific, and I'm grateful that others can do it too, but I have been here through this course of time and watched the dedication of the individual here to meet the team aspirations, and it's just, very commendable. And I've seen the whole thing, and it's changing lives. It is, and it's serious work right now. We have a lot of faith to restore, and we're doing it. So thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like we're up to finance. Hello, Janice.
Hello, good afternoon. Today we are looking at a brief overview on the screen to accompany what is in your board packet for the financials for the end of the month of July. Happy New Year from Finance. We are already in September, but this is how reporting works, right? So at the end of July, the outstanding warrants cash balance is all reflected there, and we are looking at a total fund balance of $23.3 million. As a reminder, there's no state aid in July. So our predominant source of income is a zero in the month of July. So we always expect that fund balance to dip way down in the month of July. It happens every year. It's nothing to be alarmed about. So the 23.3 is what was left over after we paid the expenses in the month of July. Also, July is one of our, outside of teacher bonuses, July is our heaviest expense month because we have a lot of things like curriculum and that we pay for one time at the beginning of the school year before we start school in August. The goal on the revenue is 8.33. That is skewed. It looks really high because carryover is considered revenue. OCAS cash accounting, it's taken out of one year, put in the next year as revenue. So that's why that's skewed that way. And then again, as I mentioned, this is an expected number. 10% should be 8 if you were doing it exactly 1/12 of the budget. But because July is so heavy with those one-time expenses, it's still a green light in my brain. If it was 23%, I might be a little bit nervous, but 10% is completely normal. We can see that in the graph here too. This is the revenue. You can see last year in the orange, and now we're up to having a fourth year. And the blue is the current year. So now we have 22, 23, 24, and 25. So last year's carryover was significantly higher because we were trying to avoid the ESSER cliff, and there was no carryover penalty, so we were able to carry over a little extra to help us get through the decrease in funding that all schools are experiencing at the end of ESSER. And then in expenses, you can see the blue is this year again, so it's looking fairly normal for the size of the school district and what we have as far as our payroll right now. So next month, we'll do the August financials as normal, but we're also going to do updated funding estimates. By the time I see you next month, the October 1 child count will be complete and reported, and that gives us a lot of data into what our weights are going to be, which is how we determine that weighted ADM, that magic number that I dream about every night from the first day of school until October 18th. So we'll go over some preliminary calculations based on the information that we have in our hands at that time, and then probably an updated budget because we'll be able to solidify more where we think we're going to be based on our enrollment. 2/3 or almost 80% of the way through that first quarter count period. So there are actually 2 sets of financials in your packet today. One is July, which is what we just went over. The other is June, and it is a very, very minor update. The financials that are in your packet are what was submitted to the State Department through our OCAS data, which is due by September 1st, and we locked it before that. So that we needed to put that back through with the final payments, and we liquidated a lot of POs that weren't paid so that you would have that data in front of you, and it matches what you're going to see on the transparency website at the State Department. And I welcome any questions or comments if you have any.
Hey, Jenny, did you say approve both June and July?
Yeah, there are 2 items on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. There are.
So do we need 2 separate votes?
Yeah.
So I would move to vote to approve financial statements ending June 30th, 2024, item 3C on the agenda.
Second.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Ms. Flom?
Yes.
Mr. Hammonds?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
And Mr. Vella?
Yes.
Then I would also move to approve the financial statements for the period ending July 31st, 2024, under 3D of the agenda.
Second.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Ms. Flom?
Yes.
Mr. Hammonds?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
And Mr. Vella?
Yes.
Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone wants to pull out for discussion?
Did we need to discuss 4F or?
Do you want to pull it out?
Well, I'm just referring to the change in wording. Is that what's set? Is that what we're voting on? Is that change in wording? Okay. Then, no, I don't need to pull it out.
All right, then I'd accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Ms. Flom?
Yes.
Mr. Hammonds?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
And Mr. Vella?
Yes.
And I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Ms. Plum?
Yes.
Mr. Hammonds?
Yes.
And Ms. Myers?
Yes.
And Mr. Vella?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank everybody.